Yeah, sure. So what we wanted to start with is one of our polls. John, you'll be producing this. So the question we're asking is, what's your biggest challenge with product ideation? And we give some options here: too many ideas, difficult to prioritize, lack of follow through after sessions, disagreement between team members, or maybe it's something else too. And if it is other, and you want to include that in the chat, that would be very helpful. And we'll run the poll here for just another 10, 15 seconds or so. See some good responses. Great. And John, maybe you could read through some of the others in chat. Looks like there's quite a few there as well.
Yeah, it looks like we've got some not enough good ideas, product market fit, same ideas over and over, core problem identification, idea to production. Yeah, some good ones popping in the chat there. Lack
Yeah,
of domain understanding. I'll go ahead and end the poll and share that. Let's look at the results.
great. And so we can see too many ideas at about 11%, difficult to prioritize at 32, lack of follow through at 36, and the other making up about 12%. All right, that's very helpful. Well, thanks for sharing that. Let me shut that down. And moving on. Okay, so here's today's agenda. We're going to cover first the misconceptions about ideation. We'll get into a reframing of the way we should think about ideation to make it more effective, what it's going to take to prepare for the ideation session. And then Luke will lead the discussion and exercise on giving a live demo on applying the approach and how it works in contrast to what you might typically do. I wanted to start here as well by laying out a story that I found very exciting when I was facilitating this ideation effort. This was years back. And the Bosch team was trying to come up with a circular saw that would win in the North American circular saw market. It took them just 4 hours in an ideation session to conceptualize this product that they knew with a high degree of certainty was going to win in the marketplace. Well, how did they know that? Well, they brainstormed a set of features that looked something like this. And how did they know these were the right features? Because they addressed these needs. And how did they know those were the right needs? Because they discovered a segment of the population that had these 14 unmet needs, and they went on to devise a solution that they knew would get the job done significantly better along all those key dimensions that the customers were looking for improvement. Now, this is not by accident. This circular saw went on to be their top selling circular saw in North American market for a good 10 years. And what we're going to talk about today is how to make this a repeatable process. How do you do this consistently so that the products coming out of your ideation efforts are solid? You know they're going to win in the market. You can prove it. You can prove that they're going to get the job done 15, 20% better or more. So let's get into some of the misconceptions about ideation. Traditional ideation is really thought about as brainstorming and then idea management. Like you brainstorm lots of ideas and then someone has to filter them out. The ideas that, there are no bad ideas, get everything on the table. The wall-to-wall sticky notes, we've seen all that. But the general philosophy is something like this. The more ideas we have, the greater the chance is that one of them is going to be a great idea. The only problem is we have to figure this out, right? We need to fail fast. We got to filter out all the bad ideas as quickly as possible so the big ideas will surface. So you could look at it that way, but there are some issues associated with that traditional type thinking. The first issue is managers are often paralyzed by the number and types of ideas that are generated. I want to cover, I think it's obvious that the number is, certainly relevant. Um, I've worked with companies, when I worked with IBM, they had a 100,000 idea database, 100,000 different ideas. The Bosch team had about 10,000 different ideas that they were tracking. That's hard enough. But the other part is they're not comparing apples to apples. So even if you're comparing ideas, some ideas are related to picking a different market to go after. Some ideas are features on a platform. Some ideas are for a new platform. Some ideas are for business models. They don't match up. They're ideas for a variety of different things. And trying to sort these through these things when you compare apples to oranges becomes extraordinarily difficult. Second, they struggle to evaluate and prioritize them correctly. Think of it like this: for every idea that you have, you would have to ask the question, is that idea in a market that I'm in or that I want to be in? And does that idea address a unmet customer need? And what unmet need is that? You'd have to do a significant amount of work around every idea to figure out if it's the right idea for a given market. And lastly, only a very small percentage of ideas that enter the development process actually exit, and even fewer than that are success in the marketplace. The success rate is exceptionally low. So the ultimate goal is to be able to brainstorm solutions that will have a great chance of winning before you even enter the development process. So we want to reframe the ideation's overall purpose, right? The goal of ideation is not to generate lots of ideas and hope that they address some unmet needs. It's the other way around. The idea is to understand the customer's needs and know that the solutions you generate and conceptualize will address them and win in the marketplace. The goal is to build cross functional alignment around those ideas. The goal is to give the team confidence that what they're working on in development is going to win in the marketplace. So this is a very different philosophy. Ideation is really all about coming up with the winning idea, the solution that will get the job done significantly better, and aligning the team around that solution. And both of these are equally as hard. Coming up with a solution is hard enough. Aligning the team around it can be equally hard, as most of you know, working in teams. So, what information do we have to have before ideation begins? Because innovation doesn't begin with an idea. From our philosophy and standpoint, what we need first is we need to know that we're focusing on a market or target that's actually approved by our company. We don't want to have ideas for features on products that aren't even in markets that we serve. That's just a waste of time. We don't want to have ideas around new markets if there's no criteria for selecting new markets. So we need an approved target market. And in most cases, this is rather simple. It's a market that you're already serving, a group of people and a job to be done. What we need also is validated unmet customer needs. We have to know that the ideas that we're generating are focused on satisfying these needs that are unmet in the market. We also need context around these unmet needs. Why are they problems? What's the root cause of the issue? What are the workarounds? Are there known solutions? We need clear idea evaluation metrics so we can judge the value of one idea over the other. And we need cross-functional participation so we can get that alignment once the solution's been generated. So key ingredients. So how do we prepare for the ideation process? Well, it begins by defining the market. Again, defining the market around a group of people and the job to be done. And as most of you know, who've been with us for a while, you can break that job down into a job map with job steps and figure out what parts of the job are you currently getting done. Are there parts of the job you're missing? Are competitors getting parts of the job done that you're not getting done? Do you have the potential with any of your products to get the entire job done? These are all great questions to ask, even at this early time frame. That's the first step. Second step is understanding the customer's needs. We define needs as desired outcomes. They're the metrics that people use to measure success when getting the job done. So we want to study the underlying job, break it down to its component parts, understand all the metrics people use to measure success when getting a job done. Also, we can ideate around those needs that will ensure that we're getting the job done better. Think about it like this, and here's an example that we often give on removing an anatomical structure. These statements, very granular, very specific, like number 25, minimize the time it takes to locate the vessels that are feeding the target structure, right? Now, if that's a need, If that's an unmet need and we can effectively come up with a solution that minimizes the time it takes to locate the vessels, we know that that solution is going to be valuable. And we want to understand that across the entire job. What are all the needs and which of these are unmet? In many markets, there's 20, 30, 40, or more unmet needs that could be focused on and addressed in some priority order over time. And to get them in the priority order, we want to know which of these are unmet. For this, to achieve this goal, we use quantitative research that allows you to determine the importance of each of these outcomes and the current level of satisfaction given the solutions that exist today. And so with that information, you can figure out where customers are struggling to get the job done, along which outcomes. Again, this informs ideation. These are the areas that you're going to focus on in ideation to come up with solutions that will get the job done significantly better. At the same time, we got to remember that innovation isn't just about getting the job done better, but it's also about getting the job done more cheaply. And to that end, we want to identify those needs that are overserved as well, which might be good ideation targets for cost reduction. So these become our inputs into the ideation process. There's one other step we follow. We also conduct our segmentation techniques around unmet needs to see if there are segments of people with different unmet needs and decide if we want to target our ideation efforts at one or more of those segments. With these insights, we have our targets. We can begin to formulate and deploy our winning strategy. We know the most efficient path to growth in problem space. In other words, we know which outcomes are the most underserved across the largest number of customers. And from this, we can make our decisions as to where we should focus our ideation efforts. We know, like those top three, for example, in purple, we call these high leverage opportunities. These are outcomes that are underserved in 100% of the market. So we know right up front, if we can solve for those, we're going to create value for 100% of the population. And then we could look at other cross segment opportunities and within segment or segment specific opportunities as well. So this lays the path out for where you need to go focus for ideation. And this is exactly how the Bosch team was successful. They brainstormed a set of features that addressed the unmet needs that were discovered through the research after studying the job to be done. The same thing with Kroll On Track. As they entered the electronic evidence discovery market, they had failed in their first two attempts. Using our approach, they were able to come up with a feature set that addressed the top unmet needs that were discovered in the most underserved segment of the market, which gave them their entry point to success. As with Cox Automotive, coming up with a new software solution with a feature set that addressed their top unmet needs that were discovered through this research approach after thinking through the entire job the customer is trying to get done. So what we're showing you here is a repeatable process for taking information into the ideation session that will produce a very positive and consistent result. And Luke's going to come on here and take you through the next part here and just kind of go through an exercise with you to show you how all this works. So, Luke, all yours.
All right. Tony, thank you. Good background information for where we're going. And just as a little sidebar, John came to me a little while back and said, "Hey, Luke, in our upcoming webinar on ideation, would you mind demonstrating to the team, to the participants, outcome-driven ideation and how we do it with our clients?" And I said, "Sure, John, how much time do I get?" And he said, "Well, 5 minutes, maybe 10." And I said, "Okay, well, we normally do this in 3 hours, maybe virtually, or 2 days on site, but I think we can collapse it down to 5 or 10 minutes. So hang on to your seats, guys. We're going to go pretty fast here. What I would encourage you is please do try to participate with where we go. I think you'll get a little bit more out of it if you jump in. Okay. I need to set the scenario just a little bit for us to do this, and I will be asking you guys shortly to use the chat window. So hang on just a sec on that. For us to simulate our ideation process, we do need to start thinking in a context somewhere. I've selected a context of online travel services. So think of yourself as an innovator in online travel services. Okay? So put that innovator's hat on for just a second. And we are going to do some prompts here. So my first question for you is right at the top of the screen. You're in online travel services. What should we build? What could we offer to the market to create value? Go ahead and use that chat window. I'm going to give you a couple more prompts to get us going. But any ideas that you have, let's get them into the chat window. Don't overthink it. Just a few words would be great. Um, how could we improve vacation travel for people? How could we create more value for our customers? How could we create more value for our business, right? More revenue, more growth, more margin. Um, what are some trends in the market? How might we take advantage of those? What should we do? What should we build is the question for you. So I see some ideas flowing in. I really appreciate that. We're going to go really fast with this cycle. John, if you don't mind just kind of checking in on how that's going, I'm going to
Yeah.
give everybody like 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'll start reading some of these off for you. Brett Patron wisely asks, well, what's missing in the market? Matt said visa rules, no me to make it seamless, all-in-one vacation planning without travel agents. Patrish said more time to travel. Amen to that.
Yeah.
A way to get business flights for cheaper when they are on offer. Travel ideas that are off the beaten path and that appeal to me personally. Reduce time of getting to and back and forth. How to find places which are beautiful but not crowded. Amen to that one. That seems to be the really hard one. Now that with Instagram, everybody knows where all the beautiful secret spots are. Auto refunds when flights are canceled. Let's see here.
Okay.
What else?
That's enough.
That
Let's
good?
cut it right there,
All right,
John.
we're cutting
That
it.
was perfect. We're cruising. I really appreciate everybody jumping in on that request. I do want to offer a quick reflection. So we did not just use outcome-driven ideation. We used pretty basic brainstorming there. I'm going to reflect on it quickly, and then we're doing this for just a little bit of contrast. So my request to you was pretty broad. It was pretty wide open. That's a reflection for how I set this whole thing up. The only constraint I really offered was I said, we're an online travel services space. So you did have to think like, hey, this is the space I'm probably going to be innovating in, right? Other than that, pretty unconstrained. We did try some common prompts. We see these all the time in organizations. Ultimately, we're kind of saying, what should we build? What should we invest in next? What's going to create the most value for the most people, etc. And we even used a little bit of language that was productive. We had a how might we statement in there. We had, some questions about what, etc. If we got a little more sophisticated, I'm sure we could have given you guys some prompts with perspective shifts, other things maybe from design thinking, right, to encourage a little more creativity. We have some creativity triggers in our toolkit that could kind of get you thinking alternative ways about ideas. But these were common prompts. We see them all the time in organizations. The net result, and in fact, I was guessing this would happen. We got quite a lot of ideas in 30 seconds. Imagine if we extended that to even just 4 minutes. I think we'd have hundreds of ideas in there to have to sort through. So quite a lot of ideas happened with just a pretty simple request of everybody. An interesting thing that I've seen happen, I've had it personally happen to me, is I ask such a broad question. Sometimes that causes people to get stuck, right? Like there's maybe too many potential pathways I could go with that, and I just kind of get jammed up on where do I even start. So that's another common occurrence. Contrasting, how many other ideas just kind of rolled in. And then the last question here, now that we have all of those ideas, which of them should we invest in? That's an outstanding point for us now that we've just done our mini ideation campaign together, which is very common. Tony mentioned databases of tens of thousands, 100,000 different ideas. That's quite a lot of things to try to pick through to figure out what's the best idea in here that's going to create the greatest gains for the most people for the least cost, effort, and risk. So those are my reflections on what I set you guys up into. That was not outcome-driven ideation. That was just basic brainstorming, commonplace stuff. We are going to jump into outcome-driven ideation. We're going to use some elements of it. Again, typically a workshop that we would set up with our clients would be at least a few hours virtually to make sure we're kind of thoroughly going through the opportunities, or even a few days if we get together on site to do that ideation. So we're going to pluck out a few elements of that and demonstrate them here. To do this effectively, we have to get the inputs that Tony was talking about, okay? So we've got to put on that lens of jobs to be done. We need to look at the market through that lens, and then we need to dig deeper and start to pull out insights. In the case that I'm presenting here, we took a look at travelers who were planning a vacation, and we dug in deeper. You'll recognize the artifact on the right. It's a job map. These are all the steps that we go through as we plan a vacation. In doing our research, we actually found one of the biggest areas of unmet need to be right up front in this job when we're defining the vacation experience. Okay? So as a good innovator, we're going to follow that lead and we're going to get ourselves focused in step one. That's where we see the biggest struggle. That's where we think we can create the greatest value or the greatest gains for people. So we're going to go deeper. If you follow me, I'm going to take you one level below that. So Tony talked about customer needs all the way down through that hierarchy of job map, and outcomes. We have an outcome in step number one that was more underserved than the rest. So if you're tracking our methodology, this was highly important to a lot of people. It was poorly satisfied with the solutions that they're using today. That outcome is minimizing the time it takes to align vacation objectives among participants. So if you think about, we're planning a trip and we're trying to get all the participants aligned around the objectives that we're going for with this vacation. We have a few samples from our qualitative conversations. Megan, who was planning with her family, it took quite a long time just to get what kind of trip they wanted to take figured out. Okay. We had Jason, who was traveling with friends. He was trying to get the whole group to basically share what they wanted to do, where they wanted to go, what were their goals, etc., and some of their constraints. And people were passive, people weren't sharing readily until he said, here, we're going here, and then everybody reacted to that. And then Carlos, similarly, planning a trip with some extended family, just found that the goals weren't clear up front. Everything took a whole lot longer as a consequence. So you can kind of see all of that shaping into the outcome that we're talking about here. Now, before we start solving this, I am going to ask you to solve it shortly. I want to make sure that we truly understand it. So if we get a group of creative people like we have today, what we really need to do is make sure that they understand the problem that they're solving. So again, right up front in this job, when we're trying to define the vacation experience, we're trying to align a group of people around the vacation objectives. It's important. We're trying to get people to express their objectives. We're trying to get them to agree across the group on kind of a common set. It matters quite a lot because if we are misaligned at this step, there's a lot of frustration that enters the process. We lose enthusiasm for the trip. We make poorer decisions. And ultimately, if you think about this, the longer it takes to do this, the fewer options we're going to have for our trip, and the more that trip will cost. So we want to get this done efficiently and effectively, right? It happens because people maybe haven't surfaced all of their objectives or constraints, right? And that it's hard to collaborate and communicate across a group. So we see that happening as some of the root cause. Today, mostly people are trying to figure this out through communication exchanges, like, having a conversation in person, over the phone, video chats, group chats, emails, etc. And they're struggling, they're dissatisfied. It isn't working well today. So now I've just given you guys a heap of context and I've focused you on a single problem that we're going to solve together. My question again, what should we do? What could we build? What could we offer to help solve this particular underserved need? Okay, go ahead and use that chat window. And John, if you don't mind just helping again, take a look as some of those ideas start to flow in from the audience here.
Sure thing. Let's see here. First one is send a pre-made survey out to everyone going to the trip. Oh, these are flying in now. Similar concept to a Pinterest board for vacations that are collaborative boards where all users can individually add their preferences, include Gen I that creates themes and suggestions based on everyone's input so that the ideas are summarized and the group as a whole can see what makes most sense. Easy polling on type of vacation, a vacation conjoint with the planner could use to determine which people value. A joint vision board. I see this vision board, joint vision board idea coming up a couple times. Let users send a survey.
Perfect.
All right. Looks like we got
I
a
think
couple
that's good right
AI.
there.
All
Yeah, feel
right.
free to
All right.
keep the ideas rolling. I ran this exercise with a group just a few weeks ago. We had them conceptualizing for a little bit longer, and we saw convergence around an idea that involved getting a kind of a polling system out that had a standard set of topics for people to be providing their inputs on. And then on top of collecting all those inputs, a visualization scheme that would allow the team to see, or the people to see, how well aligned all of their inputs were and where they had areas of misalignment that they needed to resolve. And we went on to actually do a little concept testing around that idea against this need, got a little feedback that it was boosting satisfaction, got a little more feedback saying, what if we adjust it to help them resolve those areas of misalignment and agreement? So if we took that concept a little further forward. So pretty interesting if you're thinking about, wow, we had an opportunity we identified in the market. We got a whole bunch of ideas. We converged on an idea that we thought had the most merit for addressing this. We also considered things like cost, effort, and risk for pursuing that idea. And then we tested it and got the feedback that yes, it was boosting satisfaction here. Also, that with some adjustments to the concept, we really think it had some good potential. So great to see that from everybody here. I think there's a lot of cool ideas even beyond what the other group came up with in the chat. So I appreciate everybody opening that creative aperture we just did. I'm going to offer a brief reflection again, and the reason we did that first exercise versus the second exercise is to create the contrast between traditional requests for ideas and how outcome-driven ideation works. The first reflection that I'll offer you is that we were very targeted, weren't we? I mean, we picked a single need to focus on here. And interesting thing, last time I asked you the question, some ideas started rolling. This time I could like almost see people's minds churning on it, right? Like I've got a problem to solve. Let's start figuring out some options. And there was a more thoughtful response. I think even the number of words that showed up in people's ideas were a little deeper there. So we're very targeted in what we went after. We went after a well-qualified problem. Why do I say that? Well, we did the research ahead of time to know that a statistically significant portion of the population struggles with this topic in a very meaningful way. They said it was highly important. They said it was poorly satisfied today. That's a rich opportunity to create value for people. If we solve it well, we know we're going to create material value for them. The last thing that we did, we invited everybody into a little deeper context. I think Tony mentioned like, what are the root causes of the problem? That's a big deal, right? In traditional problem solving, we have a problem definition, then we have root cause analysis, and we make sure we're solving the underlying things in order to solve the thing that we see at the surface here. So we went out and we got that additional context. We had to do that through some qualitative interviews. So we called people and we said, help us better understand this need. What does it look like in your world? Why is it significant to you? Like, what are the consequences if it goes wrong? Um, what is causing you to struggle with it, or what contributes to your struggles with it? And then lastly, what are you doing today to address this, work through it, work around it, etc.? That is a great asset to bring in to a group of cross-functional team members who can use their creative capacity to tackle that problem. So, great target, well qualified, good understanding of the problem, right? So we're doing this lightly, but hopefully you get a sense for how outcome-driven ideation just really gets focused, and it uses outcome-driven innovation to get us into that focus. Okay, I'm going to recap this process, and I'm just going to add to it a little bit beyond where we demonstrated. Number one, we did the work to go qualify the market, to go qualify the needs in the market, and we selected the top opportunity in our data. We said we want to go after the one that we think is going to create the most gain for people, the most value. Okay, we could do that for more. Tony gave examples where we went after 14 key underserved needs, right? So we focus on those. We know that if we solve them well, we're going to create material value for people. Number two, we got that opportunity context. So we went deep into understanding the need. We did additional diligence on understanding why that need was unmet. Number three, we did use some creative prompts. In our conversation just now, I went very light. How might we address this? We can certainly use all those wonderful prompts that help people think creatively on this need and how we might solve it. We commonly use creativity trigger patterns. So those are an interesting reference that help people think beyond their first idea, right? Last thing we do, and we didn't really do this here today, is we take a look at the performance of that idea against some specific things. The biggest one that we start with is, how far is this moving satisfaction against those key needs that we've targeted? So we know that satisfaction was low. Are we moving satisfaction sufficiently so that we know we're creating material value for people? We also look at it under the lens of how much cost, effort, and risk is associated with pursuing this idea. And you can almost think of that as like a benefit cost comparison, right? So the greatest gains, the greatest benefit for the least cost, effort, and risk. That is outcome-driven ideation in a nutshell for you. And I will pass it back to John.
Beautiful there. So to conclude, one, I just really want to comment on the difference between the first step there and once you gave a focused idea to, or a focused need to, for the audience to ideate on, and you commented on the length of the responses increased, the clarity and the convergence on the ideas improved, and that was just in a matter of 10 minutes. I think that just in that short period, we really highlighted the power of the difference of having focus on when you understand a need that is unmet, you go in it with confidence that this will, once you solve this need, that it's going to have an impact to your product and services. So I thought this demonstration was really great, Luke. Thank you. Tony has offered his free consultation for those who are interested in either outcome-driven innovation or outcome-driven ideation. I told him if we do this, that his calendar will explode with meetings. And he said, bring it on. As a result, it is hard for me to find time on Tony's calendar because his calendar is being filled up with requests. So if you are interested in scheduling time, actually the URL on here, there's a missing string. It should be strategy.com/Tony. Very simple. I can put the link in the chat. That is a form that will schedule time directly with Tony. So if you are interested in outcome-driven innovation and how that turns into outcome-driven ideation for your team, please do reach out and set up a 30-minute strategy session with the team, and we'll help you build a path to success. Again, that's strategy.com/Tony. I will be putting that in the chat here right now. Now, as I promised, we will go to Q&A session. So if you have, I know questions have been flowing in, and I've got many of those documented. So if you have some additional questions, please use the Q&A tab. It helps me organize and go through the questions a little bit easier. The chat window flows by really fast. So if you have some questions, use the Q&A tab to ask those questions. So this first question, Tony, there's a lot of questions. This one's going to go to you. A lot of questions around just the upfront part of the process, the outcome-driven innovation process. We gave a very high-level overview of the process. I have a couple questions that I'm going to go through in order, but I think the first question, if you could just go to the step 2 in understanding the outcomes. Could you talk a little bit more about how we capture outcomes and customer needs from customers and what that process looks like?
Sure.
Maybe you can share your screen a little.
I could attempt that again. Let's see if it works. Okay. And so you can see my screen now, right?
Yep.
Okay. So it's this process here where we're capturing the needs. So it's building out this model. This is really the key to success. We know that people buy products to get a job done, right? So what we want to do is go interview those people who are trying to get the job done, and we work with them. Generally, what I like to do is have a session with about 4, 5, 6 customers that will dedicate a bit of time. We generally pay them to do this. They're usually like 2-hour clips. The first session is designed to gain consensus on the job to be done. What is the job, right? We want to make sure we have consensus on the high-level job statement before we go any further into the process. That may take a half hour. It may take 2 hours. I've seen it take longer. It's a good, healthy debate, but you have to get that part right. Again, it's done with external customers. It's not done debating internally what you think it is. It's what the customers say it is. The same thing holds true in the job map. I like working with the same group of 4, 5, 6 people for the next 2-hour session. They're kind of learning the approach and learning how to think about their problem in outcome space. But the second step is to create that job map. Here again, it could take a half hour. It could take 2 hours or more. But dedicating the time to get it right is absolutely critical. You don't want to move forward into outcome gathering until you've got consensus on what the job map looks like. What's challenging about this is, you may be talking to 3, 4, 5, 6 people. They may all execute the job in a different way in solution space. But what we're trying to do is to understand, what are they all trying to do in problem space? They're all trying to do the same thing, right? And that's what we're trying to get at. And when I listed, the set of outcomes for removing the anatomical structure, this gets at that issue, right? We talked to 20 different surgeons. They execute it differently in solution space, but they're all trying to do the same thing in problem space. That's what we're trying to get at. So getting those outcomes may take 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 hours. Again, it depends on how good you are at collecting the outcomes and the kind of participants you have. Generally, I like working with the same group of people until I get 60, 70% of the outcome statements. And when I feel comfortable with that, then I move on and interview additional people, show them what we've already collected, have them add on to it, comment on it, gain more consensus. So we're slowly building out this model. And when we're going through the interviews, what I'm asking people to do is to go through the job in super slow motion. like slow it way down step by step. And you can see what you get when you lay it out that way. Like each of these outcomes here, very precise, very detailed. They're in chronological order. It's the way they think about the job, right? The steps are in order, the outcomes are in order. So all that's done through qualitative research. I describe the way I like to do it. Um, Many team members do it differently. They may have just many one-on-one interviews. It depends what you feel comfortable with in terms of your interviewing style, but that's how I like to approach it.
Beautiful. Thanks for that, Tony. And then there was a few questions just around on the quant step. Maybe if you can just briefly talk through, now that we have this list of 100 plus customer outcomes, how do we measure these outcomes to get to those underserved, overserved needs so that we know where to focus with the
Yeah.
ideation sessions?
So we take all those outcome statements and put them in a survey. That survey gets administered to a large number of customers. It could be anywhere from 180 to well over 1,000, depending on whether it's B2B, B2C, the number of segments you're trying to cover, those types of things. But what we're asking people is to tell us last time they executed the job, how important was it that they minimize the time it takes to do X, Y, or Z, right? And then given the solution that you're using, and we ask them what solution so we know, we ask how satisfied are you with your ability to achieve that outcome, right? So we're getting 2 data points for each outcome statement for a given solution that's defined. So we know if that person's using our product, a competitor's product, and we can do competitive analysis this way too, downstream here a little bit. But with those 2 inputs, we can then conduct our analysis, which is pretty straightforward. We use a opportunity algorithm that says if an outcome is very important across the population and the difference between the importance and satisfaction is great, then we're going to call that an unmet need. So we run that through the calculation, which plots it out on the graphic that you see here. And just, again, using simple logic. If the vast population says this is very or extremely important, and very few of those people say they're very extremely satisfied, that's an area of focus for value creation. The other end of the equation, if they say, hey, this isn't that important and it's satisfied well enough, then we would consider overserved and a target for cost reduction. So, hopefully.
Excellent.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think that was very helpful. This next question, I knew there'd be a couple questions around AI, the topic of the moment right now. This question comes from Stephen. So, are you using AI yet to contribute to ideas, validate them, analyze feedback, etc.? There's a 2-part question. So, are you also working on AI solutions to get jobs done yet?
Yes,
Want to
we've
break
been
that
working
down?
on.
Yes
Yeah,
and
sure.
yes.
Yeah, we've been working on it for a couple of years. So making pretty good progress. Our practitioners use AI-based tools to get familiar with a given market. So, you know, we need to know from our clients basically the general job that they're trying to innovate around and be able to build a job map. So we ask AI to build a preliminary job map for us. And of course, it gives you something, gives you answers. Are they good? Well, we compare them to our other quality checks. We find that in building a job map, AI is pretty good. We'll give it about a C or so. In terms of getting a set of outcomes, it still requires a lot of improvement. We'd give it a C minus, a D. It's very hard for AI to distinguish between solution space and problem space and be consistent with it. And the other key thing here, we have companies say to us all the time, you're not just going to use AI to uncover customer needs, are you? You're still really going to go talk to customers, right? Real customers. And I find that quite telling. You know, there's a hesitance, an uncertainty that what you're getting with AI is real, right? Unless it's validated by customers. So while we're using AI to assist in preparing us for better interviews and understanding the space and the language and things like that, uh, and again, it's helpful for the job statement, the job map, but when it's come to outcomes, there's still much room for improvement. And I think they mentioned too, are we using it on the back end for ideation? Sure. You can plug in a outcome and ask, how might this be solved? Give me 10 ways, give me 5 ways, and, they'll give you 10 ways. Then you still got to go through the rest of the work. Are they valid? Are they feasible? Which one's the least cost effort risk? But we find those are good inputs into an ideation session if you want to like just get the ball rolling. But again, from a people standpoint, if people in the room are coming up with the ideas and buy into them, and you can gain consensus around that, you're going to have um, much more luck getting people aligned in the right direction, the same direction, as opposed to you just delivering an AI-based answer. Right? It's too early to tell if that's the best answer, and from what we've seen in most cases, it's not.
Great. Thanks for that, Tony.
Yeah.
This next question comes from Shiva. Um, First time we've had the Henry Ford quote, I think, in a question. So you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
We love this question, Shiva. So I'm excited for Tony to talk through it. But the question is, how do we use outcome-driven innovation for validating totally new disruptive ideas? Like Henry Ford said, if I would ask people what they want, they would have told me a faster horse. How can we examine that today through new innovative technologies using
Yeah.
this model?
Yeah, that quote's very interesting. But what Henry Ford is saying is he's not saying people don't understand their needs. What he's saying is if I asked people what solution they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. So in solution space, people don't know what they want. They don't know the best solutions. They're not the technologists, so on. So we shouldn't be asking customers what solutions they want. And of course, in outcome driven innovation, we don't. It's just the opposite, right? We know that people don't know the best solutions, but they do know what they're trying to achieve, right? So this is why we define a market as a group of people and the job to be done, people who are trying to transport themselves and their luggage from point A to point B. And we can study that job independent of a solution or technology. And we can capture 100 outcomes that people use to measure success, even back in the 1800s, going from point A to point B. There'd be outcomes related to safety and speed and reliability and, the same issues that are around today. And that's the beauty of the approach. We want to define the market around something that's stable over time and lay out that framework like I showed you so that you can test disruptions, right? You can say, hey, is there a technology coming along that will address these unmet needs better than any other technology? If yes, then you may want to invest in that technology, right? So that's the way we like to think about that. If you were a CD maker back in the day and you had the job map laid out in front of you, you would certainly recognize that the MP3 is going to eat your lunch, right? Because it's getting more of the job done significantly better. And if the MP3 player manufacturers had the job map and outcome sitting in front of them, they would have easily recognized that streaming services was going to disrupt them because it's a technology that gets the job done a lot better. So laying out the model is a great way to help identify potential threats from disruptive technology.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful question in relation to this topic of ideation, Tony. When you understand what all the needs are, you all are the experts on the different types of solutions, the technologies, working with the engineers is the different ways to solve it. And when you arm the team with that focused problem of the customer to solve it, then you can start asking those types of questions of what new technologies may exist, or are there new ways to solve this problem that will get the job done better and or more cheaply. So I think that's a great question to end on. I want to be conscious of everyone's time. Again, thank you. This was a very lively session, very active session in the chat and the Q&A. Again, if you are interested in talking to Tony, have an interest in outcome-driven innovation or outcome-driven ideation with your organization, go to strategy.com/Tony. Just added that link again in there to talk through those opportunities for your organization. Tony, do you have any last thoughts or comments for the group?
Well, I guess I'd like to say that, leave you with this, which of these is easier? What are the chances of you randomly coming up with a solution that addresses the top 15 unmet needs in the market if you don't know what they are? And the answer, of course, is it's pretty slim. But what are the chances that your team would be able to utilize its creativity and skills to identify solutions for 15 unmet needs if it knew exactly what those 15 unmet needs were? And the answer is pretty good. And this is why the approach flips the equation around. Instead of coming up with ideas and hoping they address the unmet needs, we start with the unmet needs and know that the solutions we're creating will address them. It's a game changer.
Great. Luke, any last thoughts and comments? Thank you again for the live demo.
Yeah. Hard to beat that point. I'll try to add to it briefly. There's some interesting psychology when you present people with a problem to solve. They can't help themselves most of the time, but try and solve it. And so what we've been talking about is really good, really worthwhile problems to solve. Let's make sure we know those, and then let's equip our team with the knowledge and understanding of them. And I've just seen through a lot of sessions, people will jump into that. They'll take ownership, they'll solve and build the alignment that Tony was talking about, same direction, right direction, traveling back out of that session with a bit of steam behind it. So lean into that, lean into, people like problem solving.
Great. Thanks again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a great week.
Great. Thanks, everybody.